Hello and welcome. Namaste from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Gautam Roy. Coming up over the next 30 minutes. Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal makes statements in both houses of Parliament saying the government will safeguard national interests in the face of US President Donald Trump's 25% tariff announcement. Myanmar's junta ends the 4-year-long emergency, paving the way for elections possibly in December, which the opposition groups have pledged to boycott. And Russia breaks ice with Syria's new leadership. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov meets his Syrian counterpart in Moscow. India's Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal has made statements on US tariffs in both houses of Parliament, saying India will take steps to protect national interest. He added that India has transformed from being part of the fragile 5 economies to becoming the fastest growing major economy in the world. Minister Goyal also mentioned that the government is consulting exporters, industries and other stakeholders to understand their concerns. He also emphasized on the welfare of farmers, workers, entrepreneurs, MSMEs and industrial stakeholders.
वाणिज्य एवं उद्योग मंत्रालय निर्यातकों और उद्योग सहित सभी हितधारकों से संवाद कर इस विषय पर उनके आकलन की जानकारी ले रहा है। हम अपने राष्ट्रीय हितों को सुरक्षित करने और आगे बढ़ाने के लिए सभी आवश्यक कदम उठाएंगे। मात्र 1 दशक से भी कम समय में भारत फ्रैजाइल 5 अर्थव्यवस्थाओं में से निकलकर दुनिया की सबसे तेजी से बढ़ती प्रमुख अर्थव्यवस्था बन गया है। हम अपने रिफॉर्म्स और अपने किसानों, एमएसएमई और उद्यमियों की कड़ी मेहनत के बल पर 11वीं सबसे बड़ी अर्थव्यवस्था से शीर्ष 5 अर्थव्यवस्थाओं में से एक बन गए हैं।
Even before these statements in the House, the government of India had on Wednesday issued measured responses to US President Donald Trump's tariff announcement. The government said it has taken note of the US President's statement and is studying its implications. According to a statement by the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, India and the US have been engaged in negotiations on concluding a fair, balanced and mutually beneficial bilateral trade agreement over the last few months. They remain committed to that objective. The Indian government attaches the utmost importance to protecting and promoting the welfare of the country's farmers, entrepreneurs and MSMEs. It will take all steps necessary to secure India's national interest, as has been the case with other trade agreements, including the latest Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement with the United Kingdom. This, of course, has come after US President Trump announced an imposition of 25% tariff on imports from India starting the 1st of August. He also said that the US is still negotiating with India on this trade deal. Now, the clock has been ticking closer to US President Trump's latest tariff deadline of the 1st of August, and while several more deals have been reached since his last tariff deadline of the 9th of July came and went, trade talks with many countries are still in flux. In April, Trump unveiled sweeping import taxes on goods coming into the US from nearly every country. That included heightened reciprocal rates for certain countries. The first 90-day pause arrived in an apparent effort to quell global market panic and facilitate country-by-country negotiations. But 3 months later, only 2 deals emerged, with the UK and Vietnam. A separate framework for a deal was hashed out with China, and by early July, Trump began sending warning letters that higher tariffs would be imposed against dozens of countries on the 1st of August. There's been talk of a deal with the UK as well. Well, now the US has announced trade deal with South Korea as well that will subject South Korean imports to a 15% tariff on imports as part of an agreement with the Asian trading partner. In a matter of fact, South Korea had been facing a 25% levy if it had not struck a deal. As part of the agreement, South Korea will also invest $350 billion in the US and purchase $100 billion USD of liquefied natural gas and other energy products. The announcement has come just a day before the 1st of August deadline for countries to reach agreements with the US or be hit with higher tariffs. South Korea's presidential office said that the country's trade agreement with the US had pushed down tariffs on Korean automobiles to 15%. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung said the deal would put his country on an equal or better footing compared with other countries. But South Korean shares ended lower on Thursday, with the Kospi dropping 0.28% to 3,245.44, erasing early gains. US tariffs of 15% on South Korean imports announced by President Trump slammed automakers, with Hyundai Motors and Kia Core falling 4.5% and 7.3% respectively, losing their 2.5% tariff edge over Japanese rivals. Samsung Electronics dipped 1.65%, while SK Hynix rose 3.8%. Shipbuilders rallied, but the new trade deal with the US weighed heavily on market sentiments. Japanese government spokesperson Yoshimasa Hayashi said on Thursday that his country will closely monitor trade talk developments between South Korea and the United States after President Donald Trump said the US will impose a 15% tariff on imports from South Korea.
We will continue to closely monitor related developments, including recent agreement between South Korea and United States, and will continue to thoroughly analyze the impact on Japan based on related developments, including agreement between Japan, the United States, and South Korea.
Also, US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said during an interview that the US has made trade deals with Cambodia and Thailand ahead of President Donald Trump's 1st of August tariff deadline. Meanwhile, Thailand expects more details on its tariff rate from the US within the next 24 hours. Thailand's Finance Minister Pichai Chunhabajira has said the country was still working a little bit more on trade details with the US in a post on his X account on Thursday, after the US Commerce Secretary said a deal had been done.
Donald Trump solved a war between Thailand and Cambodia all weekend long.
By the way, he solved the conflict worldwide 1 a month since he's been president. That's a pretty good track record.
Unbelievable. And because he uses trade, he gets to invite me on the phone, and I listen all day Saturday while he's calling Cambodia, Thailand, Cambodia, Thailand. And what happens on Monday? They announce a truce. And you know what we did today? We made trade deals with Cambodia and Thailand.
And Trump signed an executive order implementing an additional 40% tariff on Brazil, bringing the total tariff amount to 50%. The order said the tariffs would go into effect 7 days after the signing on Wednesday. The order would apply an additional 40% tariff on the baseline 10% already being levied by Trump. But not all goods imported from Brazil would face the 40% tariff. Civil aircraft and parts, aluminum, tin, wood pulp, energy products and fertilizers are among the products being excluded. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva hit back at the move, saying he would defend the sovereignty of the Brazilian people in the face of measures announced by the President of the United States. End quote. Meanwhile, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said on Wednesday that tariff negotiations with US President Donald Trump's administration have been constructive, but the talks may not conclude by the 1st of August deadline.
Look, these are complex, they're comprehensive, they're constructive negotiations with the Americans are ongoing. It's possible that they may not conclude by the 1st of August, but we'll see. The team's there, we're working hard, conversations today, myself.
Global markets trembled as the Federal Reserve held interest rates steady on Thursday, defying US President Donald Trump's demands. In Asia, Hong Kong, Shanghai and Seoul, all the markets slid while Tokyo edged up, reflecting uncertainty over Trump's tariffs. The US dollar surged as investors doubted a September rate cut despite dissent from two Fed governors. Trump's trade deals, 15% tariffs on South Korea, and a $350 billion U.S. investment pledge, 25% on India with a penalty of Russian ties and 50% on Brazil rattled economies. U.S. Fed Chair Jerome Powell has called the trade landscape dynamic, warning of rising inflation risks. In Japan, the Bank of Japan held rates steady, balancing inflation and tariff impacts while the yen weakened. And Indian equity indices ended in the red for a second consecutive day on Thursday. The Sensex shed 296.28 points to settle at 81,185.58. The index traded in the range of 81,803.27 to 80,695.15 on Thursday. The NSE Nifty 50 also settled lower at 24,768.35, down 86.7 points after swinging between 24,635 and 24,956.50. And the Indian rupee fell to an over 5-month low on Thursday. The Indian rupee ended at 87.74 against the US dollar. Now, the Union Cabinet has approved the Central Sector Scheme grant and aid to National Cooperative Development Corporation with an outlay of 2,000 Indian crore rupees for a period of 4 years from 2025-26 to 2028-29. These funds will be utilized by NCDC for granting loans to cooperatives for setting up new projects or expansion of plants and loan for meeting working capital requirements.
और आज जो बड़ा फैसला लिया गया, इस फैसले का महत्व आप समझिए। एनसीडीसी कोऑपरेटिव सोसाइटीज को लोन देती है। आज उसका कैपिटल 2000 करोड़ रुपए से बढ़ाया गया ग्रांट इन एड के माध्यम से। एनसीडीसी जो लोन देती है, उस लोन में करीब 99.8% रिकवरी है। नेट एनपीए जीरो है। नेट एनपीए जीरो है। बहुत बड़ी बात है ये। इस तरह का जो फाइनेंशियल सपोर्ट सिस्टम बना है, उस फाइनेंशियल सपोर्ट सिस्टम जो कि एक अच्छा मॉडल बना है देश में, इसको और आगे बढ़ाने के लिए 2000 करोड़ रुपए 4 साल में एवरी ईयर 500 करोड़ रुपीस, ये इस आज के कैबिनेट के अप्रूवल का क्रक्स है।
The Union Cabinet, chaired by Prime Minister Modi, has also approved a total outlay of 6,520 crore Indian rupees, including additional outlay of 1,920 crore Indian rupees for ongoing central sector scheme Pradhan Mantri Kisan Sampada Yojana during the 15th Finance Commission cycle. This will fund the setting up of 50 multi-product food irradiation units and 100 NABL accredited food testing laboratories.
आज के इस कैबिनेट के फैसले में प्रधानमंत्री कृषि संपदा योजना का आउटले बढ़ा के 6,520 करोड़ किया गया, 6,520 करोड़ किया गया, और नए इरेडिएशन यूनिट्स और फूड टेस्टिंग लैब्स 50 इरेडिएशन यूनिट्स एंड 100 फूड टेस्टिंग लैब्स के लिए 1,000 करोड़ रुपीस का अलग से प्रावधान किया गया है।
And time now to give you some, still to come in this edition of DD India Live. After the UK, Canada builds pressure on Israel for truce in Gaza, saying it will recognize the Palestinian state in September. A long spell of rain is forecast till the 5th of August for Delhi and its surrounding areas.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Gautam Roy. Myanmar's junta has ended its state of emergency on Thursday, ramping up plans for a December election that opposition groups pledged to boycott and monitors said will be used to consolidate the military's power. The military declared a state of emergency in February 2021 as it deposed the civilian government of Democratic leader Aung San Suu Kyi, sparking a many-sided civil war which has claimed thousands of lives. The order gave the junta's chief Min Aung Hlaing supreme power over the legislature, executive and judiciary, but he has recently touted elections as an off-ramp to the conflict. Opposition groups, including ex-lawmakers ousted in the coup, have pledged to snub the poll, which a UN expert last month dismissed as a fraud designed to legitimize the military's continued rule. Now, in a dramatic policy shift, Canada intends to recognize a Palestinian state at the UN General Assembly in September. Prime Minister Mark Carney stressed that the move was necessary to preserve hopes of a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. He said it has been a long-standing Canadian goal that was being eroded. It makes Canada the third country, following recent announcements by France and the United Kingdom, that could recognize Palestinian state in September.
Prospects for a two-state solution have been steadily and gravely eroded, including by the pervasive threat of Hamas terrorism to Israel and its people, culminating in the heinous attack of October 7, 2023, and the terrorist organization Hamas's long-standing violent rejection of Israel's right to exist and its rejection of a two-state solution. A belief in a two-state solution, the inalienable rights of both peoples, and the fact that peace and security could only be achieved through it. That prospect, that possibility of a two-state solution is being eroded before our eyes.
Now, Israel has blasted Canada's announcement as part of a distorted campaign of international pressure. In a statement, Israeli Foreign Ministry said that this announcement represented a reward to terrorist faction Hamas and harms the efforts to achieve a ceasefire in Gaza and a framework for the release of the hostages. U.S. Special Envoy to West Asia Steve Witkoff is in Israel and has met Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, with reports he may also visit aid sites in Gaza. Israel had announced a daily 10-hour pause in military operations in parts of Gaza to allow humanitarian aid delivery. However, aid distribution remains perilous due to ongoing violence and looting. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs said on Wednesday that the United Nations and its partners had been able to bring more food into Gaza in the first 2 days of pauses, but the volume was still far from over. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov met Syrian counterpart Asad al-Shabini in Moscow on Thursday. They agreed to regularly inspect bilateral agreements covering security, personnel training, both civilian and military, reflecting Syria's interests. Lavrov hoped President Ahmed al-Sharaa, who ousted Russian ally Bashar al-Assad in December, would attend a Russia-Arab summit in October. Al-Shabani emphasized Damascus's desire for Moscow's support to unify Syria. The talks signal a pragmatic shift as Russia adapts to Syria's new leadership while maintaining influence. Ukraine's parliament on Thursday voted to restore the independence of two key anti-corruption agencies. Lawmakers voted 331 to 0 in favor of the bill, which President Volodymyr Zelensky submitted last week, following pressure from thousands of protesters and top European officials. The measure now goes to Zelensky for a signature. Before voting began, people gathered outside Parliament in an attempt to pressure lawmakers to approve the new bill. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Thursday said that the world should push for regime change in Russia, arguing that President Vladimir Putin otherwise would continue to destabilize Russia's neighbors. Speaking virtually to a conference marking 50 years since the signing of the Cold War-era Helsinki Accords, Zelensky said he believed Russia could be pushed to stop the war. And Russia's Penza region governor Oleg Melnichenko has said on Thursday that Ukrainian drones had struck a local industrial facility. According to the governor, the drone's attack did not cause any fatalities, though Russia's state railway company said that drone debris had hit railway infrastructure and temporarily halted trains in southern Volgograd region. Russia's defense ministry said it had downed 32 Ukrainian drones over several Russian regions. Ukrainian emergency services said on Thursday that a wave of Russian missile and drone attacks on Kyiv killed at least 8 people and destroyed buildings. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said Russia launched more than 300 drones and 8 missiles. Russia said on Thursday it had captured the town of Chasivyar in eastern Ukraine. Russia's defense ministry also added in a brief statement that its forces had liberated the town. Russian President Vladimir Putin on Thursday hosted Laotian President Thongloun Sisoulith for talks at the Kremlin. According to the statement that was made or issued by the Kremlin, the two leaders are expected to focus their discussions on cooperation between Russia and Laos on the areas of trade, economy, cultural and humanitarian affairs, and to touch on important regional and international issues. President Draupadi Murmu attended the first convocation of AIIMS Deoghar on Wednesday. Addressing the gathering, she said institutes like AIIMS Deoghar are beacons in the fight against healthcare inequality. The President emphasized that these institutions must provide affordable, world-class specialist treatment while also serving as key change makers in India's healthcare ecosystem.
प्रिय विद्यार्थियों, एम्स में प्रवेश पाना और यहाँ शिक्षा प्राप्त करना इस बात की गारंटी माना जाता है कि आप एक कुशल डॉक्टर बन गए हैं। आपको एक सक्षम तथा कुशल डॉक्टर के साथ-साथ एक अच्छा डॉक्टर भी बनना है। एक अच्छा डॉक्टर को शार्प क्लिनिकल सेंस के साथ-साथ सेंसिटिव कम्युनिकेशन की क्षमता भी होना चाहिए। हम सबने देखा है कि कुछ ऐसे डॉक्टर होते हैं जिनसे परामर्श करने के बाद पेशेंट और उनकी परिवारजन बेहतर महसूस करते हैं। आप अपनी डायग्नोसिस या सर्जरी में पूरी तरह क्लिनिकल रहिए, लेकिन अपने व्यवहार में आप सिंपैथेटिक रहिए, सहानुभूति के साथ अपनी सलाह दीजिए।
The Indian Met Department has forecast continued light to moderate rain with thunderstorms, urging caution. Continuous rainfall in Delhi NCR on Thursday has brought much needed respite from the sweltering heat, while simultaneously delivering a remarkable improvement in air quality. According to the IMD, temperatures will remain between 33 to 35 degrees Celsius in the national capital. It has also forecast light rainfall for Delhi NCR till the 5th of August. Delhi recorded its cleanest July in more than 10 years, with an average air quality index or AQI for the month standing at 79, the lowest for July since 2015. In Himachal Pradesh, severe monsoon conditions have devastated Mandi, Kullu and Chamba, with cloudbursts and flash floods washing away homes and roads, including a key Chamba-Pangi link. Kinnaur's Kinnar Kailash Yatra has also been halted due to the landslides. And some sports now, where early lunch was taken on day 1 of the 5th India vs England test at the Kensington Oval in London due to rain. It was a testing phase for India, but they played well during it. The overcast conditions saw England play India. I'm Gautam Roy. From all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India Live.